Hey, what's going on, everyone? So we finally made it to the end of 2024, which means everyone's going to be doing their favorite and best of style videos, so that's going to be awesome. And in this one, what we're going to be doing is just out of the 100 or so books that I was able to finish in 2024, these are my 10, favorites, the ones that have stuck with me the most, I think, over the course of the year. So let's just go ahead and get right into it. Now, these first 5 I'm going to do is like honorable mentions. They could probably go in any order, and then the same thing with numbers. Let's see, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Those could probably go in any order as well. And then number 1 is definitely like the only one that's my absolute favorite per se. But let's just go ahead and get started. So the first one is we got a science here with The Gene: An Intimate History by Siddhartha Mukherjee. He's probably most famous for The Emperor of All Maladies, which he won a Pulitzer Prize for. He's also written The Song and Cell, among other things. And this was awesome. I can definitely tell why he won the Pulitzer for his writing. This is a history, both like a historical account of the discoveries of DNA and genetics and the genome and that sort of thing, but also a lot of different vignettes of different episodes during kind of this process, obviously starting with Gregor Mendel, in his little gardening stuff to kind of get the alleles and genes kind of like on the radar and everything, and then how that fell into obscurity, and then kind of going through the late 1800s and early 1900s. What I really enjoyed is the scientific aspects are really simplified, and it's totally like understandable for the layperson as well. And what's really cool is the author brings in a lot of like social and cultural events that kind of occur throughout history that are sort of impacted or have their basis in like genetics and DNA research and stuff, such as like the awful eugenics movements of the early 20th century around the world, and how gene research kind of directly fed into that. One thing that I found really interesting as well is the the function of genes was like pretty well understood at the beginning of the 20th century, but before like DNA was really like understood well in the genomes and things like that, it wasn't exactly clear how genes like functioned like physically like inside the body, and there was a bunch of different competing theories on how genes were stored and then passed on to like to the different generations and stuff like that. So I found that really interesting. Also, when it was kind of still almost is the Wild West in a way, but the Wild West in like the 70s, 80s, 90s, when genetic research was like really starting to like hit its stride, and people were like scientists were starting to understand they could make pretty significant like alterations to like genetic codes and stuff like that. All the different like ethics committees and conferences that were held to try to kind of wrangle some sort of semblance of order and what the rules are for this kind of thing were highlighted throughout the book as well. And I thought that was just really cool, just super well done. I will definitely be picking up the rest of his works at some point in the future as well. So next up is my first ever NYRB New York Review of Books classic book that I've ever read, and we have Gert Hoffmann's Our Philosopher, and this is translated out of the German by Erich Mace Tessler. And this is this book might be like pretty slim, might be pretty small. It's got a lot of weight behind it. It just kind of like wears on you. You just kind of feel like how oppressive it is, which I think is a good thing. Like as a reader, like it's terrible stuff you're reading, but like good in the sense that you're thinking about it and everything. And the general premise of this book is it's 1930s rural-ish Germany between the world wars. So late 1930s. Not the best of times, especially for our philosopher, who is Herr Weichenfeld, who was a prominent philosopher, professor at university, due to circumstances of the times, ousted from his position, had to move to like some kind of rural small town, and it's kind of like the last couple years of his life, his experiences at this town. What's interesting is the book is told and narrated through the lens of like, I want to say Hans is like, I don't know, got to be around like 7, 8, 9 years old, somewhere around there. I don't think it's explicitly stated, but it's the young boy that's actually like telling the story. He doesn't always really understand the full effect of things kind of going on, but he hears and sees things, and it's just, you don't have to like just go out and murder someone or send them to a concentration camp to really just show how like I said, just how oppressive and just awful life was for different individuals. For example, like Jews, Nazis, brown shirts, anything like that. None of that is like mentioned actually in the book, as far as you know, Hans is concerned. Like those aren't things that like ever come up, but it's very easy to like kind of read between the lines, see what's kind of going on, you know, with the town pride parades and everything, you know, with the flags and all. They're not described, but then you obviously can like figure out kind of what's going on there. But it's almost, instead of someone just, like I said, getting sent to a camp, it's like death by 1,000 cuts in the kind of like years before, being ostracized by society. Obviously there's things kind of going on, not just like physical abuse and everything, but just the isolation, and like I said, just kind of the weight of like all the like aggression that you can kind of like sense around the situation. Like I said, just kind of like weighs on you and everything. And I thought it was really, really well done, especially like I said, telling it through the story of like a child, kind of seeing everything that's kind of going on there. I thought it was really well done, and I'm looking forward to reading more of those NYRB books. Next up, we have Atul Gawande's Being Mortal, Medicine, and What Matters in the End. And I wish I had read this one a little bit sooner. This is like one of those books I had seen a ton of when I first started BookTube, and I thought it was just like gonna be one of those like overhyped kind of books and it's gonna let me down and everything. And it did not. This was absolutely fantastic. And what this book is about is the author, who was a practicing surgeon physician. It's all about, you know, talking about quality over quantity of life. You know, like what's the point in having 4 or 5 extra years if 4.5 of those years are absolutely miserable? This, that, and the other thing. Wouldn't you rather have 2 very high quality, kind of like end of year, or end of life years, like end of your lives? What I was gonna say didn't make a whole lot of sense there, but he highlights all the like a bunch of research that's kind of gone on into this kind of thing. And one scene that really sticks out with me is this kind of retirement rehabilitation center, almost kind of like I think it was like a hybrid of like rehab and like hospice care and that kind of thing. He has a vignette of this place, and you know, they had kind of heard about, you know, we should, like, you know, animals are usually like kind of good to have around like older people and stuff to kind of cheer them up and everything. And the guy that was in charge kind of ran away with it and somehow got the approval. I can't even remember how, I should have looked it up before, but like just dozens of dogs, dozens of cats, like a whole menagerie of birds and everything. And there was like more than like an animal per person like in the building, and they were all like taking care of it and stuff, and just how much it improved everyone's like lives, both the workers there, as well as the residents of the center. And like I said, just super well done. And it's kind of like my whole philosophy too, of like quality over quantity and everything. I just think that's like a really important thing, especially like in the United States. We kind of have, like I said, it's all about, it seems like more, even if it's like not as good. So anyways, I thought it was fantastic. I think everyone should definitely read that for sure. Then we got one giant monstrous book here. This is The Soviet Century, Archaeology of a Lost World by Karl Schwogel. And I'm not gonna lie, I would never thought, like, you know, 5-6 years ago, I'd ever read, I don't think it's quite 1,000. I think it's like around 900 pages. Yeah, right around 900 pages with the endnotes and everything. Book on the social history of people living under the Soviet Union. So it's not a history book in the sense, like, it is vaguely, there's some chronology to some of the sections and stuff, but what this is just totally different aspects of almost, I wouldn't say they're like encyclopedia entries, but each one, there's I think 80 or 100, almost like little essays. Let's see what we got here. 60 or so. Okay, so 60 different like kind of like sub chapters on different like little highlights of living in Soviet society, whether that's being forced to kind of live in almost like the barrack apartments that are like high rises that are built up like in cities and things. How do you even get like a voucher to get there if you want to move there from like the countryside and stuff? But then having to live with lots of different people you don't actually know, and you don't really have a whole lot of choice in the matter. So city life is explained, rural life is explained. I just thought it was really interesting. You do get into like some of the more horrible, a lot of it was pretty rough stuff, but I did like how the author tries to highlight, you know, a lot of these people had a lot of like grit and like determination in life just to kind of like deal with some of this stuff. But like some of the more brutal stuff like the gulags and things are and the forced labor camps are talked about as well. But yeah, you get like a bunch of different aspects of like, you know, how did people spend their vacations like in the USSR? How did that even like actually work? You know, how did people like do like gift giving? How did people I don't know, like decorate their homes, and like what were things like that they did? And I just found it really fascinating. And it's not something I've ever really considered. I think I started this during March of the Mammoths, but didn't quite finish it. But yeah, just super well done. And everyone that's like read it has really enjoyed it. I know it's kind of like intimidating, but what I did was I read like I think a couple hundred pages, took a break, read another couple hundred pages, took a break, and then finished it. But it is, like I said, it's broken into 60 different kind of like sub chapters, so it's not, you don't have to like read the whole thing kind of in one go. And since it's not really a huge narrative per se, it's definitely easy to kind of go in and come out and go in and go back to it and that kind of thing. But highly encourage anyone that's interested in Soviet history or like Russian literature and stuff. For example, the one of the things I really enjoyed was the Moscow kitchens, which is when a bunch of like intellectuals would like kind of gather together, kind of like off the books under the table, and like kind of share their ideas and like research and stuff without like publishing. Just found that really interesting. We do have one audiobook that I want to mention too in these first 5 before I forget, and it is Natural Magic. Emily Dickinson, Charles Darwin, and the Dawn of Modern Science by Renee Berglund. And I thought this was fascinating. This is a how would you describe it? It's, I guess, a double biography with kind of the central theme of the rise of science in the 1900s. So we got, like I said, kind of biographical information on Emily Dickinson, as well as Charles Darwin. And what's interesting is both of them use nature to the fullest for both of their, I guess, you know, preoccupations kind of moving through life. Obviously, Emily Dickinson with her writing and poetry and that kind of thing, and then Charles Darwin with his writings and scientific theories and whatnot. But what's interesting, there's kind of a comparing and contrasting of their different like kind of upbringings, what was similar, what was different. And the big takeaway for me was how natural history was considered, you know, a woman's thing. It was like a lady's like hobby during like kind of the 1700s and early 1800s. It wasn't something like, you know, serious men going to school were supposed to do. Like you only did like law and medicine and that kind of, or seminary and stuff like that. You know, studying nature and animals and minerals and whatever was considered, like I said, almost like a lady's pastime. And kind of how those like roles sort of started reversing as the 1800s wore on. I just found that just a really interesting kind of scope. So Emily Dickinson actually had a lot of formal training in the natural sciences and stuff, whereas Darwin basically just like did not. So I don't know, I found that just really cool, and just kind of the whole concept of science as a whole was starting to really coalesce during kind of the mid 19th century here, between like just kind of secular culture, scientific kind of outlets and that kind of thing. As well as even like kind of like theologically, a lot of the higher ups and stuff are starting to realize, you know, we got to like kind of get with the times and figure out something, and it kind of all just coalesce into like kind of like the dawn of like modern science. Like I said, if you like Darwin, if you like Dickinson, definitely just like pick up the book. I thought it was just like fascinating, and if you like even just 19th century history, definitely check it out. So I'll have you here, if you're here for the first time, because I don't know, sometimes these like best of videos do really good and attract new people. I do have an Etsy shop. If you want to support the channel, one of the best ways to do it is just by liking and favoriting. And if you really like some, obviously buying something from my Etsy shop. I do custom art too as well. Lots of different nature and philosophy and Latin things and different colors and blah blah blah, everything like that. Like I said, even just liking and favoriting the shop helps me out in the Etsy algorithm, and appreciate that. So now let's move on to kind of the finalists, I guess we would say. Like I said, numbers 5, 4, 3, and 2. First up here, we got This Pursuit of Power, Europe 1815 to 1914 by Richard Evans. So I wanted to kind of branch out with my history a little bit this year. This is also going to be, I guess, a plug for Historathon, which I'm a co-host of now. I'll leave a link to that video and everything down below if you want to check out. Just a really cool Discord server with lots of people interested in reading and talking about history. So anyways, like I was saying, one of the things I wanted to do was branch out and read history on different eras and topics I've never really read too much about. So for those who have followed my channel for a long time, I read a lot of ancient, tons of classical, and quite a bit of medieval. But once I get to like the Renaissance, I kind of just really taper off. So like for March of the Mammoths this past year, I was like, I'm going to read, you know, an 800-page history on, I guess, the long 19th century. So something I never really like studied or read about. This one was fantastic. This is part of the, I want to say it's part of the Penguin History of Europe. So I definitely need to check out some of the other ones. This was just absolutely awesome. I want to say this is broken into 8 chapters, and they're basically alternating chapters dealing with kind of the political narrative, and then the opposite chapters are kind of like more the social and cultural kind of aspects of things kind of going on there. Political military narratives are just like not really my thing per se, so I'm really glad that it was kind of, like I said, kind of went back and forth throughout the century there. So this is kind of dealing with between the age of Napoleon and World War I. This is when a lot of stuff really is starting to happen in Europe, especially like the formation of nations and things like that. Obviously, most notably with Germany, but also with like Italy and Garibaldi and stuff like that. Lots of different figures are highlighted. For example, like Metternich is definitely one. I need to find like a good biography on just him. Just because like all like the puppet strings that are kind of getting played and whatnot during like this time period is just kind of crazy. Does highlight the spring revolutions of 1848 and 1849. That's how I first kind of really like learned about them, and I ended up getting another book just focusing on that era of time just because of this one. So that's, I guess, one of the reasons why I really like this one is it covered everything like well and thorough, but like not every single stone was unturned, even though it's like 800 pages. I never felt like it got like super bogged down, but it had kind of left me with like enough information to go researching on a couple of like other topics and things. Just for example, like another one, like Otto von Bismarck, you know, the Iron Chancellor of Germany in the late 1800s there. Like one of his things was he actually like I need to find a biography of just him as well. I think there is probably one called the Iron Chancellor. I'm pretty sure I've seen. But he was actually in favor of a lot of liberal policies, even though like he didn't really agree with them. But because of like, you know, politics makes strange bedfellows, he kind of like went with it for certain reasons and this, that, and the other thing. And I found that like super interesting. So like I said, it's kind of opened up a lot of avenues of, I guess, different historical topics that I want to get into now. So that's why it made it so high on the list. Next up is this little one. Here we got Think by Sven Brinkmann. And I actually this was one of the first ones I started taking notes over early in the year for my philosophy reading and that kind of thing. Let's see if I can find it. Yep, there we go. So I got some notes and whatever, and this, that, and the other thing here, as you can see. But anyways, I picked this one up. I had to go I had to stay in a hotel for like a work conference kind of thing. And I forgot like my reading material. I don't even know what I was supposed to be like reading. So I just kind of was like, I'll just buy something short like at the local bookstore, because like, you know, whatever. But I found this one. I just thought I just got suckered in with like the like super minimalist style. I've never heard of the author, never heard of the title or anything like that. I'm so glad I picked this up. So whoever came up with that design, David A.G. apparently, says cover design. Give them a bonus, because I don't know, for whatever reason, I just love that minimalist one. Anyways, Sven Brinkmann is a Danish psychologist, and this is basically just an extended love letter on thinking critically and enjoying like kind of living a contemplative life, and like just being like willing to like think things through and spend time enjoying like the process with that. There's a quote like on the second page that I think is like just sums it up so great. I don't know. Anyways, here it is. So, for most of us, it's important not only that we and our fellow human beings behave properly, comply with certain moral virtues, but also that we think properly, and in doing so, comply with certain intellectual virtues. It's important not only to act well, but also to think well. Doing so puts us in touch with reality, which helps us learn, and it also encourages us to think critically, which allows us to identify those aspects of the world in need of improvement. And it goes on a little bit from there, but like I said, I thought it was just a really great kind of introduction to like what the benefits of like thinking things through and critically thinking like are. I don't know, like, because he kind of goes into as well, like when a lot of people say like, you know, I think X, Y, and Z, really what they're saying is just, you know, I feel this way, or this is my opinion. There's nothing really substantive behind the words like I think anymore. Like he puts in here, like we express assertions that are neither thought through nor well-founded, but the exact opposite, immediate, non-binding experiences, attitudes, and emotions, like when you use the word think in that way. So anyways, I found it really fascinating. I do have like a short like bibliography, like I mined the bibliography and all the references and stuff for a bunch of like other books and thinkers that I kind of like want to read now, that kind of also talk about similar topics. And I kind of want to go through those as well. And it's definitely, like I said, since it's so short and just like like there's not a lot of like wasted words in this one. So I think it's only 120 pages. Yeah, 120 pages. There's nothing really wasted like in the volume. And I really like philosophical, I guess, intellectual works that are like that without just kind of bloviating all over the place on this, that, and the other thing. All right. Next up, we have another heavy-hitting book here. We got The Unclaimed: Abandonment and Hope in the City of Angels by Pamela Prickett and Stefan Timmermans. And this is, this was a super, like, kind of weighty book as well. So this is all about, basically, when someone passes on, if no one claims the body, what actually happens to them. And this is based around the situations in Los Angeles, but the authors kind of extrapolate it to incorporate, you know, pretty much a lot of areas of the United States and how it would still apply. And yeah, I in the back of my head, I always knew this was like a thing or an issue of some description, but I never realized just like the magnitude of this like predicament of this issue and how, like I said, just how often it happens. But yeah, the authors are so, they do so well kind of being delicate but forceful at the same time when talking about this. The authors take 4 real life examples and do vignettes on them throughout the book, kind of interspersed like kind of as a web of stories on, you know, what happened in their lives to kind of lead up to, you know, the situation in the end where no one actually claimed the body. Now, and then, you know, the details of, you know, the investigators that have to arrive on the scene, the coroner's office, the morgue's office, you know, all the different city departments that have something to do with these cases and what do they actually do? How does it function? And then the last couple chapters are like, you know, is there anything we can do about it and what should we do about it? Which I found really interesting. And for example, like one of the takeaways here was financial reasons is like barely makes the list of reasons someone is never or is not claimed. For example, I thought that would be like maybe that's the reason why this is like happening and this kind of thing, but nope, that's very low on the list of actual reasons why someone might not claim a body and things. But like I said, the authors just do a beautiful job talking about this issue without beating around the bush, but also being like just like I said, super like caring. And I don't, like I said, just do I feel like I'm not even explaining it like super well. Like I said, they talk about the issues, but do it in such like a sensitive like style, but not beating around the bush. So I found it really fascinating, especially in like my line, like social work. I don't deal with like dead bodies or anything like that, but I can almost like feel like the different like kind of social agencies that have to like get involved with this kind of thing. I just found that, like I said, found it really interesting. But it is, like I said, it's just a very heavy topic as well. So just brace yourself before going into it. Next up is one that I've finished quite recently, and it's This Ordinary Stardust, A Scientist's Path from Grief to Wonder. And this is also another like kind of weighty and heavy book for sure. So effectively, Alan Townsend is a PhD, like kind of research scientist, kind of dealing with, you know, some of the big like, you know, issues of physics and all that kind of stuff. And then his daughter is diagnosed with cancer. I think it was age 4, a brain tumor and that kind of thing. And it's kind of like his and his wife's reactions on like, how do we cope with this? What do we do with it? How does he approach it? And he tries his best to kind of approach things with like a scientific like background, trying to stay like calm and that kind of thing. And eventually, you know, they pull through. The daughter pulls through and makes a recovery and everything. And then I can't remember exactly what the timeline was, but like the next year, the wife is also diagnosed with like a different, totally unrelated like brain cancer as well. And it, obviously him and his family are just like reeling and kind of just trying to hold on to anything at that point. And kind of like how does he deal with it? And unfortunately, like, she's not able to make it through like her tumor, which was like super aggressive and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's all about how he uses like science and his like kind of methodology and that kind of thing to view the world, to view the situations, and to kind of cope with the different stressors that were going on with both of these things, and how he was still able to find like some kind of sense of peace and things like through these situations, which I don't know if I would be able to do that if the tables were turned on me in that direction and that kind of thing. But super powerful. Apparently there is like a TV show that deals with scientists in these kinds of situations, and he's like one of them, so I'll have to go like find that. But Hope Jahren, David Plowman, and John Krakauer like all put and Robert Sapolsky all put like blurbs on the back of the book. Like, so I mean, if that's not like like a quartet to follow there for like good words and everything, I don't know what is as far as like the science is concerned and everything. But like I said, just really beautifully written. Like, the story is just absolutely terrible, absolutely tragic. But what he's able to kind of come away from it, and the way he's able to kind of interpret the world and everything, I just found really, really inspiring. All right, and so that leaves number one. And so this was by far, I shouldn't say probably by far and away, but this is definitely my favorite book of the year. Awesome. Can't wait to tell you. And it's Polis, A New History of the Ancient Greek City-State from the Early Iron Age to the End of Antiquity by John Maw. And I can just hear all the sighs of disappointment coming from everybody here that's expecting something, pretty much anything else other than this one. But this was just awesome. If you love studying like kind of classical history, ancient history, especially, Greco-Roman history and that kind of thing, obviously you can't avoid like learning about the polis, the city-states of ancient Greece. But this book, what he does is he kind of collates just tons of research, tons of archaeology, tons of data that's not, some of it is publicly accessible, but not all of it's really readily interpretable for like the general public, if that makes any sense. And just kind of rewrites a new kind of history of our understanding of the polis. And the main argument of his book is that even after, the golden classical age of ancient Greece, which usually is like between the Persian Wars and Macedonian conquest with Philip and Alexander, that like 200 years or so, that is like kind of the golden age of ancient Greece. His argument is the polis really survived through that time period under the Macedonian domination, under Roman domination. The polis was still like a self-autonomous unit for the most part, and in most areas, and how they functioned mostly independent from the the powers that be, and kind of how they how they navigated the world to kind of retain as much autonomy as possible. And interestingly, one of the ways they did that was through becoming like more and more democratic. Obviously there are a few like big examples, like with Athens and that kind of thing, that kind of was kind of ahead of its time a little bit with the whole democracy thing. But it was interesting to learn how, like, during the Roman Republic era, and then during obviously like the Empire, a lot of these towns kind of turned towards that, away from aristocracy and like pure like oligarchy per se. I mean, there's obviously always still like the aristocracy and that kind of thing. And yeah, but like I said, just how the whole concept of the polis pretty much made it in up to like kind of the end of like the classical era. I just found that really cool. There's lots of charts, lots of photographs and illustrations and that kind of thing. Let's see if we can find some. But it kind of goes through. Well, that was a fail right there. But maybe I shouldn't say like lots of. But there's a lot of archaeological information. What I enjoy too about the book is all the data is like explained quite well and understand. It's very understandable, even for like kind of the lay reader. Like, none of you see this end up being like a textbook, at least for like undergraduate studies and that kind of thing. Maybe some Greek kind of graduate studies as well. But what I really enjoy about the book too is a lot of the polis that are talked about and used as vignettes throughout the book. Most of them are not necessarily just like the big name ones that you always hear about. You always hear about Athens and Sparta and Corinth, and Thebes and Syracuse and stuff like that. But there's tons. He kind of goes through how, like, the average city-state only had maybe a couple thousand people and was about, this big as compared to, Lacedaemonian, which is like, half the Peloponnese and stuff. And he uses tons of those as like examples of like just different like societal things kind of going on and everything. Anyways, like I said, if you like ancient history or classical history, definitely check out Polis. Definitely like the highlight of the year for me as well. I do want to thank a few of the publishers for sending me these books. Just a couple of them. See, Polis was sent by, I did request that from Princeton, so thank you to them for that. The Unclaimed was sent by Crown. And I do think there was one other, but I could be completely off the mark there. It might have just been like those two. But I do want to thank them for that. But yeah, like I said, I'm sorry if you're disappointed that A History of the Greek City-State was my #1 favorite read of 2024. But I will be doing videos on, I guess, my favorite or best of on different topics, such as I'm going to do a medieval one, probably an ancient history one, probably a philosophy one, and maybe a fiction classics one as well. So let me know down below if you'd like to see any of those or which ones you'd like to see first. Let me know if you're doing any top 10 or top videos as well. Leave those in the comments below and I'll check them out. And whatever you end up reading for 2025, always remember, read victorious.